The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
All right, welcome to the David Pakman Show. Starting a few minutes late today because of some technical difficulties, but let's get right into it. Wisconsin Republicans have decided to bypass Democrats to cut collective bargaining. The Senate in Wisconsin requires a quorum of 20 if they are taking up any measure that involves spending money. However, what they did to get around this was create a special committee of lawmakers from the Senate and Assembly, and they took out all of the money parts of this anti-union bill and then approved it minutes later 18-1. Now, who was the one no vote? A Republican senator from Wisconsin named Dale Schultz. And Schultz said, "I voted my conscience, which I feel reflects the core beliefs of the majority of voters who sent me here to represent them." So, Lewis, one Republican realizing that this split, this taking out of the money components in order to be able to vote on it by themselves was, he realized that it was not the will of the people, and he did the right thing, didn't make any difference in the end.
Oh, at least he's got a clear conscience.
Labor officials are now saying we are going to ramp up efforts to recall Republicans, challenge the legislation in court. There's 8 Republican senators that are currently eligible to be recalled. And Scott Walker, the governor, is going to find himself in a similar situation next year, once he's been in office for a year. And, you know, it's one of these things where now you have to wait to see if you can get back at legislation that you don't like. But I think there is no question that what was done here was, and the argument could be made, the lawmakers getting out of the state and not coming in, is that really correct? Even if you believe with the principle, with the end goal, is it the proper means to an end? I don't actually know. Yeah,
I mean, how do you answer that? Obviously, it didn't really matter in the end.
Well, it did and it didn't, because they were forced to now pass this in a way that clearly does not reflect the will of the people. It was, let's figure out what we can do. Let's get all of the money parts out of it so we only need a quorum of 20, and then we don't need the Democrats. It is not the way this was designed to work, but hey, loopholes are still within the system, right? So they did it. We'll see what the next step is. We'll see if Republicans are recalled. We'll see how the legislation is challenged. Fox News on this issue has been going back and forth with a variety of different streams of rhetoric and propaganda, including that the protests were getting violent, and to prove that, they showed video from protests elsewhere in the country taking place at another time. The palm trees in the background should ring a bell. Then Bill O'Reilly talked about a Gallup poll where, even though a majority was against the anti-union bill, in other words, they favored collective bargaining rights remaining, he said, well, 12% or so, I think it was, of the people were either in a union or know someone who's in a union, or maybe it was 20%. So you can't count them. And that was patently one of the most absurd arguments we've heard. Well, Fox is now taking it a step further. They are actually now just switching the numbers on the poll to make it seem like the actual numbers are the opposite. We'll put this up on the screen for you. Fox News said, you know what, that Gallup poll, which shows 61% of Americans don't want to reduce collective bargaining rights, that doesn't really suit our narrative here at Fox. So let's just switch the numbers. And as our TV audience can see from the poll here, they said 61% favor reducing collective bargaining rights of government workers. Just false, just not what the poll said. What do you think, Lewis? If you don't like the poll results, just make it up.
You know what? Why don't they just make up their own poll and not cite where it's from?
That would be too obvious.
Would it?
It's better to say it's from Gallup, but just reverse the numbers.
And when
Keep
someone
the
calls
same...
you out on it, say, oh, it was an honest mistake?
Well, they did issue a retraction, if you can even call it that. 44 minutes later in the show, almost at the end of the show, they said Brian Kilmeade says, we issued a correction. I want to correct a poll that we did about 22 minutes ago from Gallup. 61% opposed taking collective bargaining away from those people in Wisconsin, 33% in favor. I had it reversed. I apologize. But bear with me here. Even the correction was wrong, because that's not what the poll asked. The poll didn't ask about Wisconsin. The poll asked, would people oppose or favor similar laws in their own states? Okay? And Brian Kilmeade's correction did not even address the actual poll. So things just completely haywire and falling apart over there at Fox News at this point. And you know what? Maybe it's not that they're falling apart. It's just part of the narrative, I think is fair to say.
I see no reason why they can't have their own Fox News poll. It's not like
they do.
It's not like the loyal Fox audience is going to question it.
They
right?
have the Fox News opinion dynamics polls, but I think the idea is to show polls that aren't theirs to appear to be more credible.
But it doesn't matter.
I guess
they
it
could
doesn't.
show any poll.
Today on the Bonus Show, we'll be talking about an Idaho rancher that was revealed as a Boston mobster. A substitute teacher shows up to class drunk. Also, the Space Shuttle Discovery's last voyage. We'll talk about all of that. Lewis's upcoming big metal concert. So if you're not getting the Bonus Show, davidpakman.com/membership, this is the time to do it. The first 15 days of March really are the time to become a David Pakman Show member as far as I'm concerned. So let's take a break. We'll come back and talk to Matt Lewis. Still plenty more to come. davidpakman.com is the website.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.